Now, there's actually been tons of news over the last couple of days, so I want to wrap it all up here, and there's going to be some controversial things, I'd probably say, but if we all agreed on everything, it would be quite boring, and I think on one of the biggest issues or one of the biggest fixes that they're testing on the PTR, which, you guessed it, is going to be the Unholy DK snapshot of the gargoyle change, I might surprise you with my thoughts on this. Now, you know, if you've watched any of my videos before, I do talk about class changes and balancing, and that Blizzard should be treating this as a second chance at the game rather than trying to actually recreate the original, which, again, everyone just wants Wrath as it was, but we haven't got it as it was. In fact, it's wildly different. Go and type tank spot Wrath of the Lich King into YouTube, and you look at any of those videos where you can actually see the amount of damage people are doing, and compare it to what we're doing. In fact, I've been looking a lot on Warmane in preparation for this video, not on the server itself, but on the forums, and just reading their thoughts as well, as people that have been playing on Warmane servers for a long time, compared to what Classic's like, and it really is wildly different. And I think Blizzard should embrace that, and they shouldn't be scared of making changes. They shouldn't be scared of changing some coefficients on things like Rep Paladins to bring them up and make them more viable. Sorry, Rep Paladins, I didn't mean to pick on you specifically, but you know what I mean. The lower end DPS, make some changes to coefficients. Even if it was just minor little tweaks just to add a few hundred DPS, I don't see why not. But when it comes to Unholy DK snapshotting, I actually feel like they've left this a bit late, which you're probably thinking, well, we're only going into Phase 2, how can this be too late? Well, Phase 2 onwards is where we see lots of changes to how we approach bosses, and of course, things like Ulduar are going to actually have mechanics that you have to do properly, which also means that at the start of the fight is not always the best time to use Bloodlust. We'll get onto the Unholy DK stuff soon. Let's go over some of the minor bits, and actually one of the biggest questions you guys ask me in the comments is, what do I think about the Drakes as the rewards from Glory of the Nax Raider 10 and 25, and also Immortal and Undying. Now, I've said in many videos before, you haven't got to worry about Immortal and Undying. That doesn't go anywhere, so you'd be able to get that during Ulduar anyway. But the mounts were the only mounts that were removed ever. Up until now, modern day Dragonfly. If you look at all the Glory of the Raider achievements going back as far as Ulduar, the mounts were obtainable forever. It was only Nax, for whatever reason, they removed them. So I said in a video quite a while ago that I had a sneaky suspicion they wouldn't get removed. And I was right. So Blizzard has said, as we approach Wrath Classic 3.4.1 and the release of Ulduar, we want to make sure all players know that the Glory of the Raider Black Protodrake, Plague Protodrake, the Immortal title, and the Undying title will remain available to be earned throughout Wrath Classic. Good luck earning these rewards in the months to come. Again, I thought it was fairly obvious, but at least we've got confirmation now. So if you haven't got those achievements done on your main, you're missing Shocking or Undying even, or Immortal, whatever you're missing, you haven't got to panic. You're actually going to be able to get it a lot easier in the future phase. What I would like to see is them treat it a little bit like Herald of the Titans. So if you don't know what Herald of the Titans is, it's an achievement in Ulduar 10-man to only use gear obtainable in Ulduar 10-man and kill Algalon. So it would be nice just to have that minor change added to the achievement. So keep the achievements obtainable, but you can only do it in the relevant gear. And the reason I say that is because it's easy enough as it is with the gear that we've got. So come Ulduar, when you're rocking loads of 252 gear, it's going to be an absolute joke. So at least try and keep it a little bit relevant still. That would be all I ask, Blizzard. Please, please, Blizz. It is my birthday. And it genuinely is my birthday. That's why I probably sound a bit croaky. I'm extremely hungover. Another thing that you might not know is PTR is available. Now, the PTR has actually been available every time I've checked over the last week or so, but there was no raids available, obviously. But Ulduar is opening again this evening, and you're going to be able to test it all the way through to Monday. This is both on 10 and 25, and I'm assuming it's going to have the same stipulations as what we had before, where you could actually skip certain bosses because teleporters were available. Now, this is great news. There's also been some minor changes in regards to the PTR, nothing massive, but we will just touch on those as well. But this is going to be your last chance before launch, I'm fairly certain. So if you want to get your guild, get a 10-man going or something like that, just so you can familiarise yourself with the tactics, I'd absolutely recommend it. I have actually been working on boss guides for all of these bosses on both normal and hard mode, but until the next round of PTR went out, I didn't want to release them, so expect to see those to start coming out next week. Now, just a couple of things that are worth mentioning, but they are quite specific to certain classes. But if you're a Resto Druid, you might have noticed that Wild Growth was prioritising pets before players. This is not a bug on the PTR, even though it obviously is a bug, and I don't like the way Blizzard say, well, that's how it was in 3.3.5, yet they'll make changes in other places. I mean, just fix it. It should obviously prioritise players over pets, but they've said this is not a bug currently, this is how the spell functioned in 3.3.5, and while we're aware of this and agree it's not strictly ideal, we have no plans to change it at this time. And then for the hunters, well, anyone who can use a ranged weapon, really. Ranged weapon damage incorrectly scaling, so they've said we should have a new build up on PTR sometime today, and this issue should be resolved in that new build. Thanks for the report. So this post was actually put out, which is quite detailed, so if you're a hunter, I would recommend going and reading it, but what it actually suggests is that hunters are doing a few % less damage overall than they should be, due to ranged weapon scaling. There's been some items that have been changed as well, which weren't actually correctly scaled up, like leg plates of Endless Void, but one of the main ones is if you was progressing on Algalon during the PTR, there's actually been several visual changes to it, mainly to be able to make things a lot easier to see on the floor. It really is a great room. You know, Algalon's room is like fantastic, you know, visually it's great, but yeah, in terms of what it was like on the PTR at the first round of raid testing, yeah, visuals were challenging, I would say. So now the big one for you DKs. So Blizzard have said we've just pushed a hotfix to the Wrath Classic PTR that will adjust how the Summon Gargoyle spell inherits haste from the Death Knight. So I'm sure you've raided with some Unholy DKs by now, or you are an Unholy DK, and it's sort of hard to say that the Gargoyle is actually the DK's pet. I feel more like the DK is actually the Gargoyle's pet. Sorry, DKs. So to help explain this adjustment and why we feel it's needed, let's take a quick look at how the Gargoyle currently functions. So currently a Gargoyle inherits the haste and attack power stats from the Death Knight controlling it. One of the things that makes the Gargoyle particularly strong is that for its entire duration, the Summon Gargoyle spell uses whatever haste and attack power values the Death Knight has at the instant of its cast. This is referred to as snapshotting, as I'm sure most of you are aware. So with good snapshotting, you can get over 370% haste on your Gargoyle, or over 400% for DKs who are trolls using Berserking, which takes the cast time of Gargoyle Strike from 2 seconds all the way down to around 0.35 seconds for every cast while the Gargoyle's summoned. Now the route they're going down is they're going to have it dynamically adjust. So for the duration it's up, yes, you can absolutely put your pre-pot, heroism, weapon enchants, all of those sort of things, and it will benefit from it, but only while it's actually active. So at the moment, you could wait for a perfect snapshot. You might only have 2 seconds left on your haste potion at the start, but it will benefit for the entire duration of the Gargoyle itself. That is now not going to be the case. As each buff falls off you, it will then fall off the Gargoyle as well, essentially lowering its haste or lowering its attack power over the duration that it's up. Now the thing is with this, whilst this is a good fix, I said at the start it's too late, and I will explain why. Now it's actually a cast, and the whole point of it is getting the cast time down as low as possible. But it should also have a global cooldown, and it even had a global cooldown back in original Wrath. So even with a 0.35 second cast time, it should still only be able to do it once a second, just like how haste functions for every caster. The Gargoyle shouldn't be an exception. Now I've rummaged through loads of old MMO champion threads talking about this specific topic, as well as elitist jerks as well. And while I can't say 100% when a GCD cap was actually removed, all my research does actually point towards that it did exist at some point during Wrath. Now just having the Gargoyle actually have a GCD so it can't cast every 0.35 seconds with ridiculous amounts of haste, it's still going to be pumping, don't get me wrong, but it would like add a hard cap on how fast it can attack, but you could still obviously snapshot big attack power buffs to get it to do more damage. I think simply just adding a GCD to the Gargoyle would have been enough. So like the post says, the change we're now testing will cause the cast time reduction on Gargoyle Strike to be re-evaluated every time it's cast. So it will be based on the Death Knight's current haste, not the haste value at the time of the initial spell cast when you summon the Gargoyle. But interestingly, this change won't affect attack power, so you actually can still snapshot attack power, it's only haste that is going to be affected. That's going to make for some interesting testing. So they've said they don't make this change lightly, and indeed we hope not to make any changes like this one in Wrath Classic. However, the current data we have demonstrates that if left untouched, Death Knights stand to scale up significantly more than any other DPS class in the game for the remainder of Wrath of the Lich King Classic. Players have picked up on this, of course, and the class is already starting to become overrepresented in many raid groups across a variety of skill levels. As time goes by and more power is acquired, the more that group will likely push to stack the class further. Even after the change, we expect that Death Knights will still be producing the highest overall DPS in the game, and they're going to be watching DK performance closely in the coming days, and they'll make additional adjustments if they feel that the change ends up going too far. We want to make it clear that we are not planning any further adjustments to other classes for patch 3.4.1. They feel that the class representation in raids is in a fairly good place right now across all classes, and we have no plans or desire for any further tuning adjustments, which is a shame. Real missed opportunity, in my opinion. So the sole purpose of this change is just to make sure that every guild isn't just stacking loads of unholy DKs to be able to actually clear the content. So going right the way back to the start, I said that I felt like it was a bit too late. And the reason for that is, whilst this is a good change, like I do genuinely see it as a good change, but the way we approach fights in Ulduar is going to be completely different. And I feel like a lot of people, including Blizzard, by the looks of this, are actually in that Nax mode. And I say Nax mode because that's what I'm trying to get our guild out of, you know, where there's no mechanics to worry about, or the few mechanics that there are, you can largely just ignore and burn through them. Heroism or Bloodlust is just being used at the start of every fight for the DKs, and you'll start having DKs whine if you Lust or Heroism that's second too late. That isn't going to be the case in Ulduar. So whilst you'll still be able to get really good snapshots on your Gargoyle, you're probably not going to be able to get everything stacked up quite as well as you can now with Bloodlust as well. So you'd be able to get everything else snapshotted, but if you was to think about the fights, if you're doing XT hard mode, you're not going to have Lust at the start of the fight. If you're doing Razor Scale, you're not going to have Lust at the start of the fight. So all of your procs could potentially have already gone off, like your weapon procs and stuff like that could have already gone off when Razor Scale actually lands. Ignis, you could have Lust at the start. I'm not going to go through all the bosses, but you get what I mean. It's not like Nax where you can just blow Lust or Heroism at the start of every fight. So actually lining all your buffs and cooldowns ready for when Bloodlust is popped might actually still be a good dynamic for Unholy DKs. And because you're probably not going to get that super powerful Gargoyle right at the start, and because the fights are longer, you're going to get to use 2 on every boss, likely, other than things like Hodir, the snapshots are going to be lower anyway. You're going to have less control. Don't get me wrong, you know, it will only take a few weeks of clearing all the bosses before you know the exact points or percentages of the boss where you want to save cooldowns, or you want a weapon swap to be able to then get procs ready, and, you know, you'd be able to work it out. But as a whole, the snapshotting for a DK will be very different in Ulduar to what it is in Nax. So I'd have probably just let it ride out for a bit, personally. Which, again, is probably very strange coming from me, and many of you won't agree. You'll think, no, this is absolutely a good change. And it is a good change. But I just feel like this should have been changed months ago, because it's going to be Nax where it's had the biggest impact, even though, yes, DKs are going to get more powerful, but in Nax where you're getting Lust at the start on every single boss, I would say it's where it's most noticeable. But I'm closing my laptop. That's it. That's all the news. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think of all of this, because there's a lot of news. I know the DK one is the biggest part, and I know many of you won't agree with me, but I would have probably just let it ride out at the start of Ulduar and just see what happened. Again, thank you for watching. See you on the next one.